All right, welcome back to the Roast to Yourself podcast brought to you by Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop. I'm Stephen Burnett from Coffee Bean Corral in Jackson, Mississippi. And with me, as always, is Catherine Mansell, Certified Q Grader and Director of Current Crop Roasting Shop in New Orleans, Louisiana. Catherine, tell me about it. How's life today?
Today's good. I'm actually really excited about this week or this episode. So
Right.
I'm excited to get into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Well, we'll get right into it because each week we set aside about 10 minutes to field questions from our listeners about roasting, tasting, and most importantly, enjoying coffee. You can send your questions to questions@riypod.com. That's questions@riypod.com to get a nice shout out from us and, of course, to get your question answered. Now, normally we release episodes every single Friday. So if this showed up in your podcast feed or on YouTube a little early, a different day, you may have been kind of scratching your head as to why that is. But to answer that question, the why, I've got to answer a question from our friend Lorena, friend of the show. And she sent this in for us. Let's get into it. So she says, I love, and I can't emphasize how all caps that is. I love the new podcast. Can you make it a little longer? These are so informative. The plus minus 7 minutes is not enough. How about 30 minutes? Thanks, Lorena. Catherine, what do you say to that?
Well, Lorena, we're happy. We're so happy that you love the podcast, first and foremost. Thank you for your kind words and the love in all caps. We really love it.
That's right.
You're not the only person who has written in and said, why aren't you doing 30 minutes? We'd like a little bit more in-depth conversations, but we've also had a lot of people comment and say that the 10-minute mark is perfect. They can listen to it and get back to whatever they're doing. But we put our heads together and decided to periodically release some bonus episodes like this one, so we have more freedom to dive into the weeds of important coffee roasting subjects, handle especially complex questions, and present interviews with professionals in the coffee business, all without disrupting the rhythm of our typical release schedule or show length. So we've been having conversations with different people all throughout the supply chain, and periodically you'll be seeing us on a Tuesday or a Wednesday popping up on your podcast app.
Yeah, maybe even a Saturday if we forget. There's always a possibility of that.
Right.
But Lorena, I mean, this is great because we're not only answering your question, but we are giving you what you asked for, probably twice what you're asking for, honestly.
Yeah.
Because this week I actually got to sit down with an interview with John Puckett, the owner of Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop, the man behind these businesses, to learn about his journey into the specialty coffee business, what he's learned along the way, and how he's trying to make the industry better for roast-it-yourselfers like you and me. So without any further ado, and initially getting this longer, let's dive into this interview with John Puckett now.
Let's go.
All right. Well, John Puckett, welcome to the Roast It Yourself podcast. Thanks for coming on. How are you today?
Doing good, thank you.
Oh, awesome.
In the hot summer.
Yes. Yeah, a hot summer warehouse. And you've been out there.
Today's the hottest day of the year.
So. You've been out there fixing a printer, too. So this is we all wear many hats, I guess. Now, because I keep telling you that the Roast It Yourself podcast is getting spread around quite a bit. Now, we started out with a lot of our own customers, people that know Coffee Bean Corral, Current Crop, and we're reaching people that have never heard of Coffee Bean Corral before and never heard of Current Crop before. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce them to the man behind both of those businesses, which is you. So if you're ready, we'll just get into it.
I'm ready.
All right, thanks. So let's start at the beginning. What were you doing before you got into specialty coffee?
I was in a large family business and for my whole career. And so when it came time, I was ready to move on it a few years back. And so I left there and was kind of looking for something else to do. I took a few years and played some, and then started looking for something else to do to occupy my time.
There you go.
And I accidentally stumbled across this.
Tell me about the accident. How did you accidentally stumble across
I was in a morning coffee group, and two of the people that were in there I didn't know, and I had just gotten to know. And I found out they were had a business brokerage.
Okay.
And so I called him one day, one of the guys leaving, and I asked him, I said, hey, if you ever get something small, I'd like something to do. And he said, well, we only do like $40 million businesses. And I said, well, that's not what I'm looking for. And so he said, wait a minute. He said, we had a guy call Friday, and this was on a Monday. He said, I had a guy call on Friday and has this little bitty business. He said, do you like coffee? And I'm like, I'm not opening a blankety-blank coffee shop. There's one on every corner. And he said, no, it's something that nobody else, very few people do. Yeah. Well, that perked me up when I heard that, because I like that. And he started telling me about it, and he said, but look, you saw Kat when she left here. She's handling it. She's going to talk to the guy. Are you interested? I said, yeah. He said, well, we'll get back to you after we get the prospectus together. So in the meantime, with Google and everything else, I was determined to find out who it was. And I found out it was Terry Richards up in Goodman, Mississippi. And he was moving back to Arizona, and he did it as a hobby and had been doing it for a good while. And so I think I might have called Kat and said, hey, call Mr. Richards and tell him I'll be up there Friday at 2 o'clock. And she said, how'd you know? And I said, well, Google and all you can search and look on the computer. And I said, tell him I'll be there at 2 o'clock. I went up there at 2 o'clock that Friday afternoon, and we visited, drank coffee, roasted coffee, shook hands on the deal, and closed 30 days later.
Wow.
And that was
the first time you'd roasted coffee, you seen it roasted?
Well, that's the first time I knew home roasting existed.
Wow.
I didn't know anything about home roasting at all. I didn't know it was a market.
Yeah.
And that was when, you get into bankers or other financial people saying, oh, how big's the market? And you're like, we have no idea. And it's not a market that's easily measured.
Right.
And so... I like that. That was
so much of this is, and we talk about this all the time. People are so independent when they're roasting their own coffee. Exactly. They're making their own equipment. They're finding their own channels. They're buying off of other commercial roasters. Like it is really hard to tack this down. So you got in, you roasted coffee, and you saw something in that. Was it the novelty of it? Was it that nobody else was doing it?
I think it's the novelty of it and the fact that it wasn't a large investment for me at that time. And it looked fun. Yeah. And so that's what intrigued me with it, because it was just something I'd never seen before, never knew existed, and that really intrigued me by that. That was the biggest thing I got. That was excited me.
This business, 2024, looks totally different than 2017.
I took the business from Goodman. We loaded it up. Well, first, I sent my son, Christopher, up to Goodman to work at the business to learn it. And the first day, he came home and he said, Dad, you have to hire Keith. And I'm like, what? He said, you have to hire Keith. And I said, well, let's talk to him. And so I went up there a week later or so. After Christopher had been working up there and learning what we were doing, and talked to Keith, and he lives up in Durant. And so, which is an hour from here. And he came he said, I'll give it a try going down there. So I had a building already up in Pocahontas, Mississippi. I had a small 800 square foot building. And we figured out how to get everything in that building, get the racks set, and able to use a forklift, get it where the forklift would turn around. And so that's where we were in 2017. It was small. It was just Keith worked 4 days a week, maybe 3. And, we ran it from there.
Wow.
And that was really...
we just wasn't it the anniversary?
Just
last week.
So now we went into another building in Gluckstadt and moved over there, and they were 1,800 square foot buildings that connected, one big building.
Sure.
And when we hadn't been there several months. I got the landlord, I said, can we take the wall out between the two? He said, yeah, we'll cut you a hole so we can get the forklift through. So
cut a forklift hole.
We built a storage room on one side and had where we pulled on the barrels on the other side.
Okay.
And then a few years later, or a year and a half maybe later, we cut the wall out of the third warehouse and moved into it. And
talk about measurable growth.
Exactly. And so we kind of moved.
Wow.
And so then when it came time, we had to have a fourth warehouse. There wasn't one available. So we located a 14,000 square foot warehouse with 26 feet high ceilings in Jackson. And Artie was racked, had the rack in there, everything. We didn't have to do much except that it wasn't air conditioned.
That's important.
And we went a while without air conditioning, and it wasn't very good. And that would have been hard keeping. And so I went and found a guy to come in, and I remember the day we turned it on in July that year, and it was brutal, and they were so happy. So now we don't have a problem keeping people as much. Now the heat, we're air conditioned.
Yeah,
so.
Mississippi is not a place to mess with the heat.
And in the coffee, we have a quality control on humidity, and so we had to do that really to make sure the moisture content of the coffee stayed, which is something we do. Being in the humid South, we check moisture controls regularly. We check moisture readings on the coffee regularly. Yeah. And then the customer could call and say, hey, I think and we'll go check it and see. So we do our best to keep it. I think we do a real good job of keeping the moisture within its limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the humid South.
And what do you do? What do you credit this rapid growth from 2017, relocating, taking over that whole building, and then having to relocate again due to growth?
Well, the business has changed because of the growth. I mean, if it makes, I would say the first few years, it was a marketing business. There wasn't a lot of marketing. And Develisys, a company I'd hooked up with in Pennsylvania that already had the website, they started taking me into the social media, into the search engine optimizations and all that type thing. Yeah. And so that became, the business grew through that.
Just good marketing, getting the word out.
Marketing was the big point. The other that I'd say is successful for our business is our biggest secret, I think, is customer service. When the family business I was in, we were the Caterpillar dealer, and customer service was the number one thing. I've been beat in my head all my life by my dad and, family in there. And so we answer the telephone. Yep. And I get furious if I hear somebody didn't get called in or get called back immediately. So those were things, I think the personalization is really big, and then the marketing with it. People, they knew we would answer the phone, and today they do. So that was the biggest. The next few years were production. We're learning to find more efficient ways to package, to bring in the coffee. Once we got it here, how we transferred it, just the logistics and production of the operation were the big things the next several years.
That's one that I feel like people that live in Jackson are surprised we have as much reach and ship as much coffee as we do. People that know us just online and order from us are surprised our team is so small.
Yeah.
Like that we're able to do all of that with the team we've got, and that's due to efficiency.
Well, and I would tell you this, Mondays were always our biggest day, and it still is. You don't do anything else on Mondays but fill orders from the weekend and Monday. And that we would be here till 6 o'clock on Mondays. And now on a Monday, I'll walk through the warehouse and they're all 2 o'clock, they're done.
Yeah.
And they're efficient. The staff here is just, they've made it so efficient in their operation of filling orders that, that's really been a huge change for us. And the big holidays, we weren't preparing ahead of time.
Yeah.
Now we can hit Cyber Monday and not worry about what's going to happen.
Our biggest sale of the year. Look forward to that Cyber Monday.
And, I could see that. So now we don't worry as much. We used to feel like Saturday and Sunday after Thanksgiving, we had to be here to keep up. And now with the efficiency with the warehouse and the staff, people can be off on the holidays a little more than what we've had to do in the past. So.
Yeah, and our families appreciate that very much. But I mean, that's something else I want to ask you about. I mean, you've built a team here that is, I think, a crack team. And what I've heard before I came on was that you take people that come in and pull orders, you find their skills, and you put them in different positions on the bus, so to speak. And you've done the same thing at Current Crop. So, like, what's the secret to that from a leadership standpoint?
Well, they're different. They're different in the way employees are. Being e-commerce versus retail. The e-commerce, I've always looked to find what the strengths are in someone and start guiding them toward that area. So if you come in here thinking you're doing A, you're liable pretty quick to be moved into C, because you can see when somebody has a passion for something, certain area or doing something. And so that's...
So looking for people's passions.
And we do put people in jobs that are their weaknesses because they will learn and improve the area. That was a good example with Michelle in Rancher. Selling was not her strong point, and Catherine and I talked about it, and we put her over it, and she launched it right out. She had it, and that really worked out. Putting her in her weakness, and then we all of a sudden found through that some strength she had with administrative duties that we needed, and so that was pretty cool.
She knows how to get the best out of people.
And
she
so
really does.
That's the whole thing. I mean, Catherine came in December of a year, and I went to Costa Rica that January, and I was riding in the back of that truck up and down them mountains and thinking about the business and how I could grow it, and what I'd learned down there and what I'd seen from people on the trip and learned from the people at La Manita. I said, I need somebody I need a cupping person. And so I got home, maybe even on the plane coming back, I started researching about schools. And I found the SCA with the sensory skills and then the Q grader. So I came back and I asked Catherine, I said, can you quit smoking? And she said, yes. Why? I said, well, I've got a job. And I handed it to her and I said, I've got you a place in Oakland, California to school in 2 weeks. Would you, or 3 weeks maybe 2, 3, would you be willing to go? And she jumped all over it and started researching and looking. She landed in Oakland the day the governor shut down the state for COVID. And so she spent a week out there, got her sensory skills. I think she finished top in her class. And the Q grader got put on hold because of COVID for several years. So that was how we ended up, Catherine. So,
well, and talk about finding someone's
so we
passion.
found her strengths and passion in that.
I mean, and it was passion too, because when I came on, she was preparing for the Q, and she would answer emails just sniffing those little vials of oil, and writing down the answers and stuff. I mean, she literally ate and slept and drank only coffee grading, and she's absolutely fabulous at that now. Now we talked a lot and about the history of the business, but one big difference between Coffee Bean Corral now and Coffee Bean Corral before is that we have a lot more commercial and commercial roasters, whether that's go to the farmers market on the weekend roasters or people that are putting out a large volume of coffee. How did you pivot from being primarily home roasters to also including and incorporating these commercial roasters that are making a business out of their passion?
Well, we were so focused, and we still are today, on the home roaster. That's our bread and butter, our core business. And then we started looking at the logistics of having 25 and 50-pound boxes. Because we started getting coffee shops, when we started doing that and getting the word out, you'd have a coffee shop in Iowa that wanted to run Haitian Blue for a month, and so they wouldn't want to go buy a whole bag of Haitian Blue. They would, we get coffee shops that have their blends, and if they don't need but 15 pounds of a Sumatra in it, they didn't need to go buy a 132-pound bag.
Right.
So we found that niche where it also gave coffee shops a way to try new coffees with their customers and see. And so you get shops all of a sudden. We had one, got hooked on the Papua New Guinea Perosa, Vornos, and they were, and that became one of their staples. So that's how that came about. And then we also, I guess 10 pounds was our biggest package. And we started discovering that the farmers market crowd, there's a big home roasting group that go to farmers markets, especially in Texas and California. And so we took, we said, they were like, hey, this 25 is perfect for us. And so that's another place is the farmers market people were giving us feedback that was good for them too.
Yeah.
So we found a good niche.
And by listening to the customers that we had.
And we found out, we found out. And so we were, so that's kind of how that came about more so was customers wanting demand for larger quantities. And once we met that market and they saw it was out there, so we didn't go to a wholesale business where we were selling bags wholesale.
Right.
We went to where we sold specific sizes.
Right.
For that reason.
Right. And to me, I mean, the 50 pound, like any job you take, they say you have to be able to lift up to 50 pounds. 50 pounds is manageable for most people. You don't have to have a whole warehouse. You don't have to have a forklift. It takes away so many barriers from people that love roasting but don't know how to get into the business side of things.
Well, that's the other thing we saw. My cousin Todd took a load to New Orleans of 50 pounds, some Ethiopian Misty Valley, to a roaster down there who was roasting it for a band this band, Let Us Loves Misty Valley. And so he roasts and bags it for them, and they sell it, on their site.
Wow.
So anyway, we went down there. Todd went down there to carry a load of coffee. And he came back and he said, John, you need to go see this. Said that roaster probably has 50 partial coffee bags sitting around because he does coffee to order.
Right.
And he doesn't need any more than that 152, than 50 pounds out of there.
Right.
And he was buying the whole bag. So when he saw us show up with 50-pound boxes, he was excited.
Yeah.
And so that's another way.
Yeah.
You
lower the bar for people.
And your inventory cost of having that much coffee on hand.
You cut out the waste, and like you say, if people with half bags left over. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a great program, and it's great for people that are starting out, because I think a lot of people start out with coffee roasting as a hobby.
Yep.
And then they start giving it to their friends and their family, and all of a sudden people are like, can I pay you? And then they just kind of have a side business. They don't even know what's happened to them, and they love it, so they keep doing it. But then what do you do now?
How many times have we had someone come in, either in New Orleans or here, and say, give me what Jimmy so-and-so has. Give me the exact same equipment, and I want the coffees he roasts.
Yep.
He said he was giving me coffee, and then he told me, you need to go buy your own equipment now.
Yep.
And he said, just give me, they'll say, just give me what Joe has or whatever. And that happens all the time to us. And that's fun to when that happens. That's kind of a good point.
Well, and on that point too, I mean, you're talking about people discovering, because when you target in SEO and marketing, you target green coffee, raw coffee, unroasted coffee. The only people that are finding that are people that are already coffee roasted. They're already looking for it. But how do you branch into? What have we done, I guess, to branch into the market of people that don't even know coffee can be roasted? It comes out of the ground roasted. How do we reach those people?
There's a lot of marketing expense, a lot of search engine optimization.
Sure.
Social media. It's a whole new world out there with advertising and it's different.
Yeah.
With this digital age and the computer internet age and the iPhones. Everybody has it there, and you've got to find methods to get it there, to get it to those
in front of people
outlets.
Yeah.
And you can't put it in a newspaper or put it in a magazine anymore. Now it's all digital advertising, and so
what's got people talking right now is this new thing that you and Catherine came up with and got rolling. And I just want to know, with Current Crop Roasting Shop in Magazine Street in New Orleans, how did that happen? How did that idea come to be? Because there's nothing else like that in the coffee world.
We had just come out of the COVID years. And so let me go back on that real quick on COVID. We live in a red state. Not to get political, but we live in a red state, and so we never had to close the doors due to COVID. So we did COVID protocols that we were required to do. We did the masking. We did everything. Right. We had the facility set, up to standards. We were Gluckstadt at the time. And, we didn't force any employee to come back if they didn't want to. If they felt they needed to be off, they, could. So from March 15th of 2020 through July 4th weekend of 2021, we worked 7 days a week to fill orders. And so, there were people that had never bought from us or heard of us because their suppliers were being shut down where they live. And they started search engines. So we spent a lot more money elevated our search engine optimization at that time too. So we moved there. So post-COVID, I'm real familiar with New Orleans. That's our big city nearby. And, my mother grew up shopping on Magazine Street. And, I grew up in a coastal town in Mississippi in Pass Christian in the summers. And so New Orleans was very familiar to us. And back in the 1980, my sister, Corral, had come up with a concept of a cooking school with a cooking supplies store around it. And this was before Williams-Sonoma, any of these people came up with a cooking school idea. She had come up with this. And so she started a store in Jacksonville, the Everyday Gourmet, and it became a go-to place to buy your things for kitchen and take classes. So back then, with this being new and as close as we are to New Orleans, she was getting chefs out of New Orleans that today you'd have to pay $10,000 to come sit in your store.
Yeah.
Emerald used to come up before when he was still at Commander's. Martha Stewart used to come before she was ever famous. After like one book, she spent a lot. So anyway, my sister got in on that, and so I just started thinking. One day, Catherine was working with so many customers over the telephone that it started making me think. What could we do? And so I thought about it, and so one day I asked her, said, let's go to New Orleans tomorrow if you got time. And I said, this is what I want to do. I showed her. She wouldn't figure, could never explained it. And I showed her what I wanted, an old double shotgun house or something New Orleans.
Sure, yeah.
And so we looked around, we talked to some people, and so we started the process of coming up with a retail version of our e-commerce. We were going to build a roasting school with all the roasting equipment, supplies, and coffee drinking accessories you would need.
One stop.
Yeah. And something nobody else did. So we couldn't find a location. And I wasn't going to do it unless I found the right location. And so we hired, we got up with a realtor, and we got up with a designer here in Jackson, Mary Sanders and her crew, and we developed a business plan, came up with taking my idea and putting it on paper. So it took 2.5 years to get it going, and that was mainly because we couldn't get a location. And finally one day, this building opened up, and we got a hold of the owner that day. He didn't even know the people were moving out, and we were already talking to him. And he was like, wait a minute. He said, they're not leaving. We said, yeah, they are. They just leased a building 4 doors down. And so we went and we got the building, and it was exactly what I wanted. Wow. Except it took a lot of money.
Not move-in ready.
It was not move-in ready, and we spent a lot more money than I probably should have. but it was just a passion for me.
Yeah.
I became obsessed with doing it because I'd never taken anything from an idea and gone all the way through. And I guess I just really wanted to see that and do that. And so we worked it out and got it, a lot of delays. And we were supposed to be open for Christmas of 2022, and we missed that.
Oh, man.
And so 2023, a contractor was finishing up. Well, what's coming to New Orleans but Mardi Gras? Mm-hmm. Well, you're not going to open a new business during Mardi Gras during Carnival season.
Yeah.
So we had the store ready. We did a soft opening, and the whole month of February was Carnival season. So we officially opened March 1st and went forward. So,
Wow.
Now we're looking at some twerking the concept and doing a few other different things with it. So
If someone goes there, what are they going to find when they walk in the store?
the thing I tell everybody, and they tell me I was right afterwards, you can't tell somebody about it. You have to go there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people walk in and they're overwhelmed. They had no idea there were this many coffee beans. Now, we only have 78 down there. We have 150 here. The hard part was picking 78 because that's all the architect would give me room for.
Yeah.
And
You don't want to overwhelm the people.
78, we overwhelmed them. And people just couldn't believe the selection. They didn't, because people didn't know this market existed, or very few.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of fun. You go in, and it starts with education. When you walk in the door, there's all kind of education about coffee from the ground, from seed to cup.
Yeah.
And it's got a really cool roasting level chart that
With the beans in it.
With the beans in it.
You can see it. Yeah.
And so we built that and got that in there. And so the first part is really educational. And then you go in there with the coffees. And Catherine has since got her Q grader. I didn't get there, but Catherine has all her cupping notes up, and we've got it all packaged, and you can. So we have 3 stations where you can roast. You can use our roasters, and we've ended up on Saturdays and Sundays, and sometimes we'll have to go into the roasting lab and add roasters for customers to use. Right. Now we charge a small fee for the roasters, but
you got to be a lot of people coming in roasting coffee all the time.
Yeah. So then the thing we get on a lot of open houses that come through there, showing them the business and showing them it's just like the wine business with the cuppings and the tastings and all. And most people down there have been to some form of wine tasting down there.
Right.
And they're like, oh, so it's like a wine tasting. And I'm like, yeah. Well, sign us up. We want to do that. And they have no idea that everything that goes in, and Catherine's got her charts and got her wall that she draws on, and she presents it to them. And so they're real surprised at that. My biggest surprise a little bit was that you sell as many cupping classes as you do roasting. If not sometimes more. People are really interested in the cupping. Not that they aren't with the roasting, but I thought it'd be a 5-to-1 on roasting, and it's not. It's almost probably even at times. And it's really, that surprised me, is the cupping.
Yeah. Especially, it's such a precise skill, and knowing how to, like, most people just think of coffee as tasting like coffee, right? And that's it. So the idea that coffee can have many different flavor attributes, like you say, wine, and we can teach you how to pick those up. I think that's a compelling offer.
Right.
But it's not just roasting and cupping classes. There's other stuff
We've
too.
got all the equipment in there. We can demo all the models of roasters. And then we have all the coffee makers and grinders and equipment in there for those. And so, the classes, we do a lot of custom classes down there. We've created some new classes. We had a friend, Jean-Pierre, we have Jean-Luc, and he's one of the master pastry chefs in New Orleans, and we were introduced to him, and so now Catherine has a cupping class with pastries from him. Man. So she goes over and picks them up. She places an order and brings them over, and they do 4 pastries in the class.
Wow.
She matches with coffee she thinks would be good with it, and that's interesting. And
so
in
cupping
Savannah,
and a pairing
and
together.
In Savannah created a cocktail class. And that's becoming real popular.
She was on the news with that the other day.
She was.
Yeah.
They had her on the news the other night mixing coffee with lots of alcohol spirit. So
it's such a unique. The whole concept is so unique in coffee, and it's just doing so well. Whenever I go in there, and I've taught a class down there. I've gone out and demoed roasting on the street, which you get people coming around the corner going, "What is that smell? What is that?" And it just brings them in.
Yeah, when I get down there, I have to park around the corner on Austerlitz, and I can tell when things are going good when I get out of the car because I can smell all the smoke, and it's a great smell. And I was worried going into next door to a clothing business that they may be upset.
Right.
We've got a good ventilation keeps it away from there. So it's not like a big roastery next door to them.
Right.
And we've never had a complaint from them at all. We've had a lot of custom classes. We'll have a business bring in 10 clients for lunch and call Stein's Deli and have lunch brought in. We had supper clubs that'll come in and bring appetizers and do a coffee roasting pairs, and so that's been good.
Yeah, people do date nights and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been an interesting thing, and it's becoming an attraction in New Orleans, where people
We're
that
getting
come
a lot
through
of
town,
tourists.
Yeah. People got 2 days here in New Orleans, got a night, and they come to Current Crop because it's a thing to do, which is just awesome. Now, people are going to ask, so they want to know, and I'm going to ask you, of all these coffees, you mentioned 130 coffees we have out here plus. Like, what are some of your favorite coffees that we have?
I always hate that question, but
you can't list 130. You got to narrow it down some.
In my house, to keep everyone happy, you have to have Columbia Bucaramanga.
Right.
I was told one time I can bring any coffee I want home, but there better be Bucaramanga on the shelf in case they don't like it.
There you go.
So I definitely have to say I'm in the Colombians, and I have the La Manita Estate coffee is one of them. So lately is one of the Costa Rican has been one of my go-tos. I went through a little phase with African coffees where I drank those a little more. We had a really good Rwandan coffee, and I got hooked on it pretty good at one time. And kind of now I'm drinking Sumatrans. I've really developed a really good for the Timor heritage. That was one it just kind of got lost in the shuffle for me, and so Keith roasted some for me a month or so, 2 months ago, and it blew me away. And I came in here the next day and I said, "Holy crud!" And I told him, I said, "This is probably the best coffee I've ever had right now."
Yeah.
And so the Timor heritage is really, really become a go-to for me also. And then I surprisingly moved into another Sumatran. I've been drinking. I'm not a dark roast person.
Yeah. Keith is, though. Keith is a dark roast person.
And someone roasted me a Java dark, and I liked it. I was really surprised.
Is it the Cayumas or the Timon Dadar?
The Cayumas.
Yeah.
And I was just, like, I didn't think. So I would tell you, get out of your box, square, and go try some different things, but keep the staple nearby. But those are the ones I'm going through right now. That's where I am now.
And to that point, we actually have a whole program that people can sign up for from Coffee Bean Corral, where they can get on the track and try all the coffees in our inventory. It's called the Coffee Explorers Club. And if you get on that, you'll get a tour every month, 6 half pounds of coffee through our whole inventory over time. And so it is easy to get stuck in a box and only do this one coffee. But every now and then you try something new and it just lights you up and you got to have more. So I definitely recommend people do that. And so a lot has changed in the coffee industry since you came in with Coffee Bean Corral in 2017. What do you see as some of the biggest differences or shifts in the market from our side of things?
Number one, there's no doubt it's price. I'll come back on that. The second is I see people go to coffee shops and they don't want a Magazine Street blend. They want to know they're getting an Ethiopian Adame. They want to know that they're getting a Bolivian Apollo.
Right.
They want to know the single origin coffee, and not what's been blended. Not that they don't like blends,
right?
But they're it's. I would say the specialty coffee market, the customers are very educated. So that was one thing we really had to get on, was our education. But the single biggest change has been price.
Yeah.
So when I came in, I didn't even look at the C market. So we buy coffee C market plus. And that plus may be $2, maybe $3, maybe $1.75. Just depends on the coffee. And so watching the C market, I never even thought about the C market because coffee was below. It was $1.20, $1. Even went below $1. It went down to $9. I remember Camilla calling me one day. She was a trader. She said, "You need to book all the coffees you can while this price is below $1." I didn't think much of it. I didn't appreciate being under $1 because I was just buying coffee.
Right, what you needed.
And the prices were good.
Yeah.
And so in 2021 and 21, the prices started going up. And it started affecting our business where our pricing had to change.
Yeah.
And so today it's up almost at $2.50. And we now, Michelle watches the C market every day. She buys contracts at the time she can with the market. And we've had to give up a coffee or two that are staples sometimes because the price had gotten too far.
Right.
That we just weren't going to pay that for that coffee anymore.
Right.
And hopefully it'll come back down. It got back down to about $1.75 a few weeks ago, but it's going straight back up right now. And it's painful because I don't like raising prices.
Right.
And I want to get our customers the best value and a fair price for the coffee. And we used to be able to sell a lot of $4 coffees and $5 coffees. and we could do, a lot of our customers will remember the 4 for $4, four coffees under $4 and 5 under $5. And we'd do those sales all the time. And now when I go in there to Michelle, I said, don't you have some coffees we can do 5 for $5? And she's like, no, this market is way up here.
Yeah.
And so it becomes more difficult. I think I want customers to know we work very hard to control our cost.
Yeah.
And keep our expenses down. Mm-hmm. So when we first got into the price going up, mm-hmm. We huddled up and said, okay, we need to go cut our fat first.
Right.
Let's go trim the fat, get more efficient and lean, and operate that way before we raise prices. So we did that before we raised prices. We cut back on some things that we could, we're doing around here that, maybe had a couple extra people or different things. So we price has been, it's been upsetting actually, because you don't want, it just seems, but then I go back and look historically right before I took the business, a year or two before, it was up in the $3 range.
Wow.
And so I think there was a freeze in Brazil and it went through the roof.
Yes.
And 60% of the world's coffee comes out of Brazil. And so Brazil rules the market.
I heard someone say if Brazil sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So from, we got a hold of a coffee one time. We were able to sell it to customers. It was a Rwandan coffee, 2 Rwandan coffees. The market was so low, and we made a huge purchase on it, and we were selling. We just came up with a 12-pound box, mm-hmm. and it was freight and everything for $12. And we went in there one Saturday, and we all packaged and boxed, and we did 600 of those. And today you can't. We love to go back and do that again.
Yeah.
But at these prices, we just can't do it.
Yeah.
So the other thing is interest rates.
Yeah.
When I was the first 3 years or so, 4 years, the spot market was really big. I didn't have to contract so much, mm-hmm. but I did a lot of contracts, but I didn't have to worry because there's so much spot coffee out there at that time, and interest rates were low.
And for those that don't know, what is spot coffee?
Spot is where you can just go buy it off the shelf in the warehouse from the trader.
You're not contracting.
It's not contracted.
Gotcha.
So now with 8% interest rates, these traders are not wanting to. Their holding costs are way too much, and so the availability of spot is much lower than it was a few years ago. And so Michelle has to work. She and Catherine are always looking for coffees, but they're always having to make sure that, we can get a contract on coffees, or we may not get it.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference with specialty coffee right now is the pricing. So with the interest rates, so we're always looking for ways to keep our costs down.
Right.
So we're working with a couple traders right now on new ways to get our coffee from them and maybe cut out a middleman.
Oh, great.
Just in the transportation end of it.
Yeah.
And cut out storage fees. At the big warehouses, or lower the fees by bringing more. Now that we have this warehouse, if we can get it direct and didn't have to store at one of the big warehouses.
Well, and that's another anomaly with our business is that we're in Mississippi. We're not paying the California, Washington State, or New York State, real estate.
Exactly.
We don't have all that. And so we get to have this warehouse that is a luxury for almost anybody else.
One of my traders came down, and he couldn't believe what we paid for the building. He's up in Virginia. He's like, do you know what this would cost up near Washington? And I'm like, I don't even want to know. So while he was here, we were going to lunch one day or maybe to dinner. Mm-hmm. He's just looking the whole time. He said, I'm going to see if you've got another warehouse I can get down here and start storing, So we're always looking for things, ways. And so now Michelle's working with our traders on the way we inventory coffee, and that maybe we can cut some cost there that we don't have to pass along.
That's great. I do know. I mean, just in those meetings, raising prices, charging more is always the last option. We exhaust absolutely everything else. Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing I've seen change is C market, and then the entry cost of money is really high.
Yeah. Now, you may have already answered this. If so, we can cut it out. But do you have any kind of sneak peeks, anything you want to talk up or talk about?
There's nothing new on the horizon at the moment.
All right.
We still have a lot of work to do with current crop down there. We are exploring some avenues with it. We've had people want to franchise. We've had people want to buy in and open several more. And I just wasn't ready for any of that. So my focus was on the store.
Right.
Yeah, but we were so focused on getting in there and learning what works and what didn't work in the retail because it was so new. And I think we did a really good job of capturing it. A few small tweaks here and there right now that we did after 1 year. We all sat down and banged it out as to what we might have missed and what we didn't miss and what we did right and what we did wrong. And so that's so right now my focus has been keeping costs and trying to find lower money for them to buy with, to managing our inventory. Managing inventory is a huge job right now, and it's not one I would want to do. And so Michelle does that, and I think our focus right now, while the economy is where it is keeping our business from slipping and keeping our customers what they want and the quality and keeping it at a price, that's still affordable to do. And I got to go back on one thing. You asked me about employees, and I told you up here, but current crop is a whole nother ball game. And when we got down there, they were having a hard time finding staff. And that's because it was new. Nobody knew what it was. It wasn't a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And so finding people was a little, I think Ezra and Catherine were panicking a little at the time. And we got a couple good people in there. But I kept telling them, I said, just wait. Just hang on. I said, in 6 months, all your employees are going to be people that are customers. And that's exactly what's happened. Everybody that works down there has been a customer. Had either been in the shop and said, hey, if y'all have any part-time work, I'd love to do this. So all of our employees were customers now.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Well, and it's more people turning their passion into a job, and a career.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is also unique in this, because you mentioned people coming in thinking it was a coffee shop. We get people to come to the warehouse here and ask for a white chocolate mocha, and but to me the charm of Current Crop is how unique it is. So looking for people, you can't ask for, I want 5 years experience in this.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. It's the first thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And John, thank you so much for sitting down with us and letting me grill you a little bit. And do you have anything else that you would like to say to our Roast It Yourself listeners, Coffee Bean Corral, Rancher, and Current Crop customers?
Let us know what you need, for one. Our customers give us new ideas. Mm-hmm. And new things, and that's where that comes from. And we have a lot of communication with customers, and that's, different coffees. They might say, "Hey, can you find, some certain Kenyan area coffees?" And we'll do that. Mm-hmm. So really, I think just keep going. It's keep your enthusiasm. Keep us enthused with it.
That's right.
It keeps us enthused with it. So,
and give us all your good ideas.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd have never thought in 2017 you'd have told me I was going to have a podcast. And
that's right.
If you'd have told me there would have been in this warehouse, I'd have thought, no way.
Yeah.
And it a lot of people helped along the way. Mm-hmm. So that's. We've had some good partners with us.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Well, very good. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Y'all stay tuned, and we're going to have Catherine and I come and do a post-game on this conversation. But, John, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Catherine, I think we blew well past our normal 10-minute episode at this point. I don't even want to look at the duration. But, man, it was a fun interview. I really enjoyed talking with him, get to sit down, drink a little bit of coffee, and discuss the whole story, the whole thing, and some things we have coming down the pipe. So, yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that. But, Catherine, I'm curious, after hearing all that, I mean, you're featured pretty heavily in this story of Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop. So, do you have anything to add to this?
I'm so glad that you got to sit down and have this interview. People ask about John all the time. And I will say he saw something in me, like he does with a lot of people that work for him. He sees something in somebody that nobody else sees, and gets behind them and supports them and helps them along the way. And that's certainly what he did with me. Sent me out to that first Q Essentials course. I had no idea what I was doing. Came back, said yes, put the patch on, like he said, and we worked together. We worked at Coffee Bean Corral together, hired everybody together that's there now, minus a few that were always there, but very special person, for sure.
Yeah, well, I couldn't have said it better myself, and hired me. So, I mean, obviously, nothing but good decisions out of that partnership. But, well, dear listeners, this has been our first ever long-form bonus episode of the Roast It Yourself podcast, and we hope to release more of these and more frequently without disrupting that 10-minute Friday schedule you've come to know and love. So hopefully everybody gets to enjoy something about this, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. And if you did, please share that on your social media platform, share that in the podcast, share that to your text groups of your friends, send the link in there too.
Yeah.
All the different things you do when you have something you really enjoy and you can't wait for people to find out about. Mm-hmm. If you think other people would like to hear about the coffee business from this side of things, the kind of unseen side, please feel free to share it with them in particular. I mean, you may have people that want to get into the coffee business and they're itching to learn more, but they don't really know where to start. This is a great place to start because you've heard someone who's done it. Yeah. In addition to supporting us on that podcast, it would be great to let your friends, family know about that and to grow this coffee community that we've got so much. It's fun. Whenever I bring someone, a guest comes into town or something like that, I try and always take them by the warehouse and I roast coffee with them. And every time they go in, like, oh, you want to take me to your work? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to go to your office thing. And then they get there and they're like, oh, this is bigger than I thought it was. Yeah. And then I take them up to the roasting lab and they're like, what in the world? And so like people are like, man, how do I get into this? How do I get this?
What do I do?
So what do I do? And I'm like, literally, I brought you to the right place. So bring your friends to the right place as well, because it's a lot of fun to do this, and it's a lot of fun to talk about it too. So thank you all for that. And we also could not do this without our audio video wizard, Josh Stampmeyer, and our graphic designer, Jatavian Walker. You guys both play an integral role. You make all this look good, and we thank you so much, and sound good. And yeah, all that stuff. So thank you all very much for that. Remember to send any questions you have about coffee roasting and coffee roasting in general, and tasting, whatever you'd like, to questions@riypod.com, and we'll be happy to respond to those and answer them, and yeah, take off with you guys. So other than that, y'all have a great day and happy roasting.
Bye. Thank y'all.